Commander Vex Toral sighed, exhaling through all 4 breathing apertures simultaneously. A sound that my species, the Carthians, reserve exclusively for moments of profound irritation. I couldn't blame him. The integration program was challenging. Another human, he grumbled, reviewing the enrollment data on his holopad. This makes 13 of them now, Instructor Zara. 13. In my prestigious combat academy. I nodded respectfully, though internally I found his dramatic response rather amusing. The Galactic Council insists on integration, Commander. Humans are officially part of the Interstellar Alliance now. Politics, he spat. Just because some bureaucrats signed a treaty doesn't mean these soft-skinned creatures belong in combat training. They are barely 2 centuries into space travel. My youngest hatchling has more natural fighting ability than their entire species. I kept my facial plates carefully neutral. The enrollment data suggests this one scored exceptionally well on the preliminary assessments. Vex Toral made that distinctive 4-way snort again. Paper qualifications. Meaningless. Remember the male human last cycle? Perfect scores on tactical analysis. Couldn't even withstand basic gravitational resistance training. Fractured 17 different bones. 17. This one's different, I said, scrolling through the file. Name's Tessa Parker. 22 standard years. Former military on Earth. Military. The commander's scales flushed an amused purple. What do humans know about warfare? Their most advanced battle techniques involve pointing primitive projectile weapons and hiding behind things. No offense, Zara, but I'm getting tired of accommodating these tourists. The Council directive. Yes, I know. Foster interspecies cooperation and cultural exchange. I will cooperate. I will exchange. But I won't pretend these humans have any place in real combat situations. I couldn't entirely disagree. Humans were fragile. Their single-heart circulatory system, their limited muscle density, their complete lack of natural armor, it made their insistence on joining combat training almost comical. Most. Just keep an eye on this Parker human, Vex Toral said, authorizing the enrollment with a reluctant press of his claw. First sign of trouble, she's out. I won't have another medical evacuation incident. The paperwork alone nearly killed me. Understood, Commander. The next morning I arrived early to prepare the training chamber. The massive dodecagonal room hummed with energy as environmental controls adjusted to accommodate the 12 different species represented in this cycle's class. Temperature, gravity, atmospheric composition, all carefully balanced to ensure no particular species had an advantage or disadvantage. Especially the humans. The students filed in gradually. First came the Dravak twins, Corvo and Kalia, their armored exoskeletons gleaming under the lights. Next, the towering Jurgen students, ducking their elongated heads beneath the doorframe. Then the sinuous Solarians, practically flowing into the room with their liquid smooth movements. I spotted the human immediately. They are easy to identify. The only species that insists on covering most of their bodies with artificial materials rather than displaying their natural features. This one wore the standard-issue training uniform, but it hung loosely on her smaller frame. Humans always looked somewhat unfinished to me. No protective plates, no additional limbs, no visible adaptations for combat whatsoever. Tessa Parker stood quietly at the back of the group. Unlike most humans I'd observed, she didn't engage in their typical excessive vocalization. No nervous laughter, no unnecessary questions. Just calm observation, her eyes, only 2 of them, another limitation, moving systematically around the room, noting exits, equipment, other students. Interesting. Welcome to Advanced Combat Applications, I announced, my translator ensuring all students received the message in their native languages. I am Senior Instructor Zara. You have all passed the preliminary requirements to be here, which means you have demonstrated proficiency in basic combat techniques. Now we determine if you have what it takes to become true warriors. I paced the perimeter of the training floor, studying each student. Combat is not about strength alone. It is not about speed alone. It is about understanding yourself, understanding your opponent, understanding the environment in which you fight. My gaze lingered on the human. She met my eyes without flinching, unusual for her species when confronting a Carthian. Most found our multiple eye arrangement unsettling. Today we begin with assessment matches. I need to see your current capabilities before we proceed with advanced training. A massive holoscreen on the wall illuminated with paired names. The students murmured as they checked their assignments. Parker, T, and Draws, K. Several students turned toward the human with expressions of pity, or the species equivalent of pity. Van Draws was the most accomplished fighter in the class, a third cycle Taurian with an impeccable combat record. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, with a reinforced skeletal structure and naturally occurring dermal plating, he was essentially a living tank. The human showed no reaction, none at all. Van, however, was visibly displeased. Instructor, he rumbled in that distinctive Taurian bass, there must be a mistake. I cannot fight that. He gestured dismissively toward the human. The pairing algorithm accounts for multiple factors beyond physical attributes, I explained. The matches are designed to be instructive, not necessarily equal. But Van began. Are you refusing the match, student Draws? I asked, letting a hint of challenge enter my voice. His neck ridges flared with indignation. Of course not. I simply have concerns about injuring an inferior opponent. Several students chuckled. The human remained silent. Your concern is noted. Combat restraint is indeed a valuable skill. I turned to Tessa Parker. Student Parker, do you wish to withdraw from this match? For the first time, she spoke. Her voice was surprisingly steady, neither loud nor particularly soft. No, instructor. Just that. No bravado, no nervous qualification, no human humor to deflect tension. Simply no. Van's lower eyes blinked in confusion while his upper pair remained fixed on the human in disbelief. Very well, I said. First match, Draws versus Parker. Containment field at 70%. Victory by submission or incapacitation only. The other students cleared the floor, forming a ring around the central platform. The atmospheric control systems adjusted, creating a slightly higher oxygen content, a standard accommodation for humans. Van took his position, rolling his massive shoulders. The human simply walked to her mark and stood, relaxed but alert. Combat protocols in effect, I announced, begin on the tone. The sharp chime echoed through the chamber. Van didn't move immediately, unusual for a Taurian. They typically favor overwhelming initial strikes. Instead, he circled cautiously, studying the human. I will not use full strength, he announced loudly, clearly playing to the audience. It would be unsporting. The human said nothing. She pivoted smoothly as he circled, maintaining the same distance between them, her posture neutral. Perhaps you should attack first? Van suggested with obvious amusement. I give you this advantage. Tessa Parker remained silent, her expression unchanged. Van's neck ridges fluttered with annoyance. Very well. A simple demonstration, then. He lunged forward with surprising speed for his size, one massive arm extending in what should have been an easy restraining grab. What happened next occurred so quickly that several students, including those with enhanced visual processing, missed it entirely. The human didn't retreat. She stepped forward into the attack, ducking beneath Van's reaching arm. Her movement was fluid, economical, with no wasted energy. As the Taurian's momentum carried him forward, she pivoted, her right hand striking precisely at the junction between his neck and shoulder, one of the few vulnerable points in Taurian physiology. Van stumbled, his rhythm broken. Before he could recover, the human was behind him, executing a complex maneuver that somehow used the Taurian's own mass against him. Despite the immense difference in size and strength, Van found himself off balance. The human's foot swept his leg, further compromising his stability. As he began to fall, she gripped his arm, applying pressure to specific nerve clusters that even I, with my extensive combat knowledge, had not realized were accessible through a Taurian's armored hide. Krevan hit the floor with a resounding impact that vibrated through the entire chamber. The human maintained her hold, applying carefully calibrated pressure that rendered his tremendous strength irrelevant. The entire exchange had taken less than 6 seconds. The room fell completely silent. Even the environmental system seemed to pause. Krevan struggled briefly, then froze as the human adjusted her grip slightly, sending what must have been a wave of pain through his nervous system. "Do you submit?" she asked quietly. The Taurian's eyes blinked in rapid succession, a sign of extreme confusion in their species. How did you?" "Do you submit?" she repeated, her tone unchanged. Krevan attempted to rise, using his superior strength to break her hold. In response, the human shifted her weight almost imperceptibly and applied additional pressure to what must have been a particularly sensitive neural junction. The Taurian immediately went still. "I submit," he gasped. The human released him instantly and stepped back. No celebration, no visible pride, not even increased respiratory rate. She simply returned to her original position and waited, as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. Krevan rose slowly, his movements uncharacteristically clumsy. His scales had darkened, the Taurian equivalent of a flush. "Match concluded," I announced, attempting to keep the surprise from my voice. "Victory to Parker." The stunned silence gave way to frenzied discussion among the students. The Solarian's skin rippled with excitement patterns. The Jurgen students exchanged rapid-fire clicks in their native tongue. The Dravak twins simply stared, their compound eyes reflecting the human's image from multiple angles. Krevan approached the human, towering over her diminutive form. For a moment I tensed, preparing to intervene if his injured pride led to aggression. "How?" he asked simply. Tessa Parker looked up at him. "You telegraphed your intentions before moving. Your weight distribution favors your right side. Your species has 7 major nerve clusters accessible through the dermal plates. Your fighting style is designed for opponents of similar or larger size. It's delivered not with arrogance, but as simple facts. Observations." Krevan's neck ridges flattened, a sign of respect among Taurians. He nodded once and returned to the sidelines, moving with newfound caution. "Next match," I called, consulting the holoscreen with renewed interest. My assessment of this training cycle had just become considerably more complex. As the next pair of students took their positions, I noticed Commander Vex Toral standing in the observation gallery above. His posture conveyed absolute shock. I permitted myself a small gesture of amusement, a subtle flaring of my tertiary breathing flaps. This human was indeed different. During the midday nutrition break, I reviewed the combat footage in my office. Slowing the sequence to quarter speed revealed what my eyes had missed during the actual match. The human's technique was flawless. More than flawless, it was innovative. She had adapted standard combat moves to account for the massive physiological differences between herself and the Taurian. There was a soft knock at my door. "Enter," I called, expecting Commander Vex Toral. Instead, Tessa Parker stepped into the room. "Instructor Zara," she said with a respectful nod. "May I speak with you?" Of course, Student Parker. That was an impressive display earlier. "Thank you." No false modesty, no elaborate explanation. Simply acknowledgement. "You have had combat training beyond what's indicated in your file," I said. Not a question. "Yes." I waited for elaboration. None came. "Would you care to explain?" I prompted. She considered for a moment. "My official record contains only my formal military training. I have additional experience that isn't documented." "What kind of experience allows a human to defeat a Taurian combat specialist in 6 seconds?" For the first time, something like emotion crossed her face, a slight tightening around the eyes. "The kind that isn't discussed in formal settings." "Intriguing. Your species isn't known for combat proficiency, Student Parker. Individual variation exists in all species. Instructor. I gestured to the paused footage on my screen. This goes beyond individual variation. Cree Van Dras has never been defeated in training. Never. Not by any opponent of any species. She remained silent. Why are you here, Tessa Parker? Truly. She met my gaze directly. To learn, to adapt, to understand combat applications across species. You already seem quite adapted. There's always more to learn. I studied her carefully. Humans are difficult to read. Their limited facial musculature and lack of color-changing abilities make their emotional states obscure to most non-humans. But there was something in her stillness that spoke volumes. The other students will be curious about you now, I said. Yes. Not all will respond with Cree Van's level of respect. I understand. I leaned forward. What will you do when they challenge you? When they test your limits? When they no longer underestimate the human in their midst? For the first time, she smiled. A small, controlled expression that nonetheless transformed her features. That, she said quietly, is when the real training begins. The nutrition period ended with the automated tone, signaling students to return to the training chamber. Tessa Parker gave another respectful nod and turned to leave. Student Parker, I called after her. She paused at the doorway. There are 17 more combat sessions this cycle. Commander Vex Toral will be watching all of them now. He doesn't like surprises. Her expression remained neutral. Understood, instructor. As she left, I found myself both uneasy and intrigued. There was clearly more to this human, and perhaps to humans in general, than we had assumed. Much more. News travels quickly in an interspecies training facility. By the next morning cycle, every student, instructor, and maintenance drone knew about the human who had defeated Cree Van Dras. The story grew with each retelling. Some versions claimed she'd broken 3 of his dermal plates. Others insisted she'd somehow manipulated gravity itself. Commander Vex Toral summoned me to his office before classes began. Tell me again, he demanded, pacing on all 6 limbs, his agitation evident in the rapid clicking of his secondary claws against the polished floor. Tell me exactly what happened. I played the footage for the 4th time. The commander watched with all 4 eyes narrowed to slits. Impossible, he muttered. Absolutely impossible. The evidence suggests otherwise, I noted dryly. No human moves like that. Their musculature doesn't allow for it. Their nervous system isn't quick enough. Their bones would fracture under that torque. I gestured to the screen. And yet, there must be an explanation. He spun to face me. Enhancement drugs? Illegal neural implants? Some kind of gravitational manipulation device? All students undergo molecular scanning before entry. She's completely organic. No implants, no enhancements, no external tech. Vex Toral made that distinctive snorting sound again. I have contacted the Galactic Council. Requested her complete biological profile. That's unusual protocol for a single training match. This is an unusual situation. Instructor Zara. No human has ever displayed combat abilities of this caliber. Not in any documented case across the 12 participating star systems. I considered this. Perhaps we have underestimated them. The commander stopped pacing, his scales flashing an incredulous orange. One anomalous specimen doesn't change the fundamental limitations of a species. Humans evolved on a low-gravity world with minimal environmental threats. They are cooperative builders, not warriors. Even cooperative species can produce exceptional fighters. Exceptional, yes, but this? He gestured at the frozen image of Tessa Parker executing a perfect neural pressure technique on a being 3 times her size. This goes beyond exceptional. This is concerning. I felt my neck plates tightening defensively. You believe she poses a threat? I believe any unknown quantity poses a potential threat, especially one that disguises its true capabilities. He closed the footage with a sharp gesture. Watch her. Record everything. If she shows any signs of Anything unusual, I want to know immediately. Defined parameters for unusual would be helpful, Commander. His feeding mandibles clicked together in annoyance. You know what I mean, Zara. Anything that doesn't fit the established human profile. As I turned to leave, he added, and pair her against Max Raven today. I paused at the door. The Scaran champion? That's an extreme escalation. If student Parker is as talented as she appears, she should welcome the challenge. His tone made it clear the decision wasn't open for discussion. I exited the commander's office with a growing sense of unease. Max Raven wasn't just any student. He was a decorated Scaran war dancer, sent to our academy as part of an elite exchange program. 7 feet of rippling muscle, hardened scale, and precisely honed killing instinct. The Scarans didn't evolve as predators, they evolved as prey that decided to fight back, aggressively. This wasn't a test. It was punishment for exceeding expectations. The training chamber felt different that day. Charged. The normal pre-class chatter died instantly when Tessa Parker entered. She walked to her position with the same calm demeanor as before, apparently oblivious to the stares. Cree Van Draz approached her before I could begin the session. The massive Taurian looked almost comical standing before the small human female, like a battle cruiser next to a scout ship. Parker, he said, his deep voice carrying across the chamber. I reviewed our match. The human looked up at him, waiting. You could have caused permanent nerve damage with that hold. But you didn't. His neck ridges fluttered in a complex pattern, respect mixed with curiosity. You calibrated your strength precisely. Yes, she acknowledged. Where did you learn Taurian physiology in such detail? Our neural mapping isn't shared with non-allied species. For a brief moment, something flickered across her face, so quick I almost missed it. Caution? Calculation? Observation, she said simply, and extrapolation from similar species. Crevan's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, skepticism. No one extrapolates Taurian weak points from similar species. And there are no similar species. The human shrugged, that peculiar human gesture that somehow communicates both dismissal and acknowledgement simultaneously. Enough discussion, I announced, moving to the center of the chamber. Form your assessment lines. The students arranged themselves according to protocol. I activated the day's matches on the holoscreen. The reaction was immediate: murmurs, gasps, and the distinctive high-pitched whine that Jurgen students make when agitated. Parker, T. And Ven. All eyes turned to the Scaran. Max Raven stood perfectly still, his iridescent scales shimmering under the lights as his breathing quickened with anticipation. Unlike Crevan's bulk, Ven's danger came from his speed, precision, and the retractable bone blades embedded in his forearms, ceremonially dulled for training purposes, but still capable of delivering devastating strikes. The instructor called Corvo, one of the Dravak twins, his mandibles vibrating with concern. This pairing violates safety protocols. The physiological mismatch exceeds acceptable parameters. Several other students chittered in agreement. Interesting. It seemed Tessa Parker had gained some supporters. The parameters have been adjusted, I replied, not meeting their compound eyes. The containment field will be set at maximum. Ven stepped forward, his movements liquid smooth. I have no objection to the match. His voice was soft, almost melodic, a stark contrast to his fearsome appearance. It will be educational. Student Parker? I asked, giving her one last chance to withdraw. She surveyed the Scaran with the same analytical gaze she'd given Crevan. No fear, no hesitation. I accept the match. Very well. Central platform. Victory by submission, incapacitation, or my intervention. That last part was unusual. I'd added it myself against protocol. The commander would notice, but I didn't care. I wouldn't allow a student to be seriously injured to satisfy Vex Toral's paranoia, but the containment field hummed to life, surrounding the central platform with a transparent barrier that would prevent any unfortunate accidents. Combat protocols in effect. Begin on the tone. The chime sounded. Unlike Van's cautious approach, Ven attacked immediately. He moved like liquid mercury, his body seeming to flow rather than run as he closed the distance between himself and the human. Tessa Parker didn't retreat. She adjusted her stance slightly, hands relaxed at her sides. Ven launched a flurry of strikes, his forearm blades extended, glinting dully as they sliced through the air with surgical precision. The human evaded each one with minimal movement, her body twisting and bending at seemingly impossible angles. It was like watching water flow around stones. The Scaran pressed his attack, increasing his speed. His movements became a blur, even to my enhanced vision. The students watching gasped collectively as his right blade came within millimeters of the human's throat. Still, she didn't counterattack. She simply wasn't where his strikes landed, always just slightly elsewhere. Conservation of movement taken to an art form. Ven's breathing quickened, his scales flushing with exertion and frustration. His attacks grew more elaborate, incorporating spinning kicks and diagonal slashes designed to herd an opponent into a vulnerable position. For nearly 2 minutes, this deadly dance continued. The human defending but never attacking, the Scaran increasingly desperate to land a single blow. Then I noticed something odd. A pattern in the human's movements. She wasn't just avoiding his attacks, she was studying them, learning his rhythms. Each evasion brought her fractionally closer to him, within his guard. Ven noticed too. He abruptly changed tactics, leaping backward to create distance, then dropping into the distinctive low crouch of a war dancer's killing form. Enough games, he hissed, his scales rippling with aggression patterns. Show me what you really are. The human tilted her head slightly. Are you sure? Something in her tone sent a shiver through my peripheral nervous system. There was no threat in the words, no challenge. It was asked as a genuine question. I am a third-rank war dancer of the Scaran elite, Ven snarled. I have faced death in 17 forms. Do not insult me with restraint. Tessa Parker nodded once. As you wish. What happened next defied comprehensive description. Later review of the footage at 1/10 speed would reveal only portions of the sequence. The human moved. Not with the fluid grace of her earlier evasions, but with a mechanical precision that seemed to bend the conventional laws of physics. Her first strike targeted a nerve cluster beneath Ven's left shoulder plate, a vulnerable point so obscure that even I, with decades of combat instruction experience, had only theoretical knowledge of its existence. Ven staggered, his left arm momentarily paralyzed. Before he could compensate, she struck again, and again, and again. Each blow precise, calculated, delivered with exactly the force required, no more, no less. The Scaran tried to defend, but his movements became increasingly uncoordinated as she systematically disabled his nervous system's command pathways. Not permanently, the strikes were calibrated for temporary effect only, but with devastating efficiency. In 12 seconds, the fearsome war dancer stood frozen, his body locked in neural shutdown, conscious but completely immobilized. The human stepped back, her breathing only slightly elevated. Do you submit? She asked quietly. Ven couldn't move his jaw to speak. His eyes blinked once, the only motor function still within his control. The Scaran equivalent of nodding. Match concluded, I announced into the stunned silence. Victory to Parker. As the containment field powered down, I noticed Commander Vex Toral in the observation gallery again. This time, his scales had blanched to a pale yellow, extreme alarm in our species. I moved quickly to Ven, administering a neural stimulant from my medical kit. His body shuddered as motor control returned. What was that? He gasped, eyes wide. The human stood nearby, watching with clinical interest as the Scaran regained movement. Pressure point sequencing. I avoided any permanent damage to your neural pathways. How do you know Scaran pressure points? Our physiology is classified by the Galactic Defense Council. She didn't answer. Then struggled to his feet, swaying slightly. No human moves like that. No human knows what you know. His voice dropped to a whisper that only those of us closest could hear. What are you? For the first time, Tessa Parker showed a real emotion. Not fear or pride, but something like sadness. Exactly what I appear to be, she said softly. It's human. Human. Possible. Ven insisted. Class dismissed, I announced, interrupting what was becoming a problematic conversation. Review session tomorrow, standard time. The students dispersed slowly, many casting backward glances at the human. She remained on the platform, apparently lost in thought. I approached her cautiously. Student Parker, but the commander requires your presence. She nodded, unsurprised. As we walked toward the administrative section, I found myself uncharacteristically nervous. That technique, I said finally. I have never seen anything like it. No, she agreed. You wouldn't have. Because… She glanced at me, her expression unreadable. Because it wasn't developed for combat with other species. Before I could process this cryptic statement, we arrived at the commander's office. The door slid open immediately. Ex-Toral wasn't alone. 2 galactic security officers stood beside his desk, their uniforms marking them as high-ranking intelligence operatives. Student Parker, the commander said, his voice carefully neutral. These officers have some questions for you. The human showed no surprise, no concern. She simply nodded. Tessa Parker, the taller officer began, your genetic profile has been flagged with multiple anomalies inconsistent with standard human patterns. Yes, she acknowledged. You will submit to comprehensive scanning immediately. I stepped forward. Under Academy regulations, students cannot be subjected to invasive procedures without. This isn't an Academy matter anymore, Instructor, Vex Toral interrupted. This is galactic security. On what grounds? I demanded. The second officer activated a holographic display. Subject displays combat capabilities inconsistent with documented human parameters. Subject possesses detailed knowledge of classified xenobiological data. Subject's genetic material contains unexplained modifications. The human sighed, a very human sound of resignation. This is unnecessary. I'm authorized to be here. By whom? The first officer demanded. She reached slowly into her pocket, moving deliberately to avoid appearing threatening, and removed a small disc. When activated, it projected a holographic insignia that caused both security officers to step back in shock. Special Observer Corps, she said quietly. Authorization Code Theta 973. The officers exchanged alarmed glances. Even I recognized the insignia, the shadowy intelligence division of the Galactic Council, tasked with monitoring potential threats to interstellar security. Impossible, Vex Toral sputtered. The STO doesn't recruit humans. They didn't, Tessa Parker agreed. Until they did. The second officer's hand moved to his communication device. We need to verify this immediately. Go ahead, she said calmly. Though I should warn you, my status is classified level 7. Requesting verification without proper clearance is a violation of Galactic Security Protocol 42B. The officer's hand froze. What are you doing in my academy? Commander Vex Toral demanded, his scales flushing angry red. Tessa Parker, if that was even her real name, settled into a chair without being invited to sit. Exactly what my enrollment states. Learning interspecies combat techniques. The difference is, I'm learning them to protect humans, not fight them. Explain, I said. She looked at me with those unnervingly direct eyes. Humans are new to the galactic community. Physically weaker than most spacefaring species. Technologically behind. Politically inexperienced. That makes us vulnerable. So the STO recruited you to, what? Spy on combat techniques? Ex-Toral asked incredulously. To learn, she corrected. To understand. Need to ensure that humans can defend themselves if necessary. Against whom? I asked, genuinely curious. Her expression remained neutral. against anyone who might view our physical limitations as an invitation to conquest. Silence fell over the room. The implication hung in the air, uncomfortable but undeniable. In the complex political landscape of the Galactic Alliance, new species were often viewed as resources rather than equals, especially physically vulnerable species with resource-rich home planets. Your combat style, I said slowly, pieces falling into place. You said it wasn't developed for fighting other species. It was developed for humans to fight physically superior opponents. She nodded. Pressure point combat, developed in secret after first contact revealed how outmatched we were physically. It targets the universal vulnerabilities present in all carbon-based life forms. But your speed, your strength, Vextoral protested. They exceed human baselines. Some humans are faster. Some are stronger. She shrugged. I was selected because I'm both, and because I can learn. The first security officer finally found his voice. This changes nothing. Unauthorized operatives cannot. My authorization comes from the council itself, she interrupted. Check with Director Axon if you don't believe me. Though he won't appreciate being disturbed about an already sanctioned operation. At the mention of the notorious STO director, both officers straightened instinctively. We will verify through appropriate channels, the second officer said carefully. Of course. She turned to Vextoral. Commander, I have no intention of disrupting your academy. I'm here to learn, not to cause problems. My skills were only revealed because the Taurian insisted on a full contact match. And Ven? I asked. That display was hardly necessary for your cover. For the first time, a genuine smile crossed her face. Professional pride, Instructor Zara. Sometimes even spies have it. Vextoral's breathing had steadied, his scales returning to their normal blue hue. If, and I stress if, your presence is authorized, what happens now? Nothing changes, she said simply. I continue my training. I learn what I came to learn. The only difference is that you now know why I'm here. And the other students? I asked. She considered this. They can know I have specialized training. The rest remains classified. Vextoral scoffed. After your display with Ven? The rumors are already spreading faster than light. Rumors are just rumors, she replied. Let them speculate. It makes no difference to my mission. The commander studied her with all four eyes. And when your training is complete? What then, human? Then I return to Earth and train others. Her voice took on a harder edge, so that next time someone underestimates humans, they will be as surprised as Krevan was. I couldn't help it. My tertiary breathing flaps flared in amusement. The commander shot me a reproachful glance. Very well, Vextoral said finally. Pending verification of your status, you may continue your training. But no more excessive demonstrations. Agreed. She stood, nodding respectfully to each of us. May I return to my quarters now? I have considerable data to review from today's session. The commander dismissed her with a curt gesture. As the door closed behind her, he turned to me. I want a full security detail monitoring her at all times. Is that necessary? I asked. If she's telling the truth. And if she isn't? He countered. If she represents something else entirely? Something worse than a simple spy? The security officers shifted uncomfortably. Commander, if the STO is indeed involved, our jurisdiction is limited. Vextoral made that distinctive snorting sound again. Just do your jobs. Verify her story. Until then, she's a potential security risk. After they left, I remained, watching the commander pace anxiously. You are overreacting, I said finally. Am I? He pulled up the combat footage again, focusing on her face during the final sequence with Ven. Look at her, Zara. Really look. I studied the image. The human's expression showed complete concentration, yes, but also something else. Something cold. Calculating. Evaluating weaknesses with a precision that went beyond combat training. What if this isn't just about defense? Vextoral asked quietly. What if it's preparation for something else? You are being paranoid, perhaps. He closed the footage. Or perhaps we have just witnessed the first indicator of a species that refuses to accept its place in the galactic hierarchy. I left his office troubled, but not for the reasons he assumed. My concern wasn't that Tessa Parker represented some human threat to galactic stability. My concern was that she might be right to prepare for one. The next morning I arrived at the training chamber earlier than usual. To my surprise, Tessa Parker was already there, moving through a series of exercises unlike any I'd seen before. Slow, fluid movements that seemed to contain hidden power. She stopped when she noticed me, bowing slightly. Instructor Zara. "What is that technique?" I asked, genuinely curious. "We call it Tai Chi, an ancient earth practice. It helps with focus and body control." I watched as she resumed the movements. "It doesn't look like combat training." "Not everything useful in combat looks like fighting," she said, executing a graceful transition between forms. "Sometimes the most important skills are invisible until needed." As other students began filtering in, I noticed something had changed. The way they looked at the human, the way they positioned themselves, no longer with dismissal or amusement, but with cautious respect. Cree Van approached her, followed by several others including, surprisingly, Max Raven. The Scaran scales still showed faint discoloration from their match. "Parker," Cree Van rumbled. "We have a proposition." She stopped her exercise, waiting. "You know things," Ven said, his melodic voice lacking its usual edge. "Things about our physiologies that even we don't fully understand. And you move in ways that defy conventional combat theory," added Kalia, the female Dravak. Tessa looked at the group, her expression cautious. "What are you suggesting?" "An exchange," Cree Van said. "Your knowledge for ours. Not just informal training, but supplementary sessions." I tensed, prepared to intervene. Unsanctioned combat training was strictly prohibited. But the human surprised me again. She smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her features. "I think that could be arranged," she said. "Under proper supervision, of course." She glanced meaningfully in my direction. I should have reported it immediately. Should have maintained protocol. Instead, I found myself nodding slightly. Perhaps this strange human had the right idea after all. Perhaps the best way to prevent conflict wasn't through suspicion and separation, but through shared knowledge, understanding. As the official training session began, I watched Tessa Parker move among her alien classmates with newfound openness. Still reserved, still precise in her movements, but no longer hiding what she was. Commander Vex Toral would undoubtedly disapprove. The Galactic Security Officers would file their reports. The Special Observer Corps would continue whatever game they were playing. But here, in this training chamber, something unexpected was happening. Something that transcended political maneuvering and species rivalry. A human girl who had been silent in combat class hadn't just dropped an apex warrior without blinking.